The galactic frontier was vast, and within it lay the Galactic Council, an alliance of numerous species spanning across hundreds of star systems. It was a body dedicated to maintaining peace, but it was also a fragile thing, held together by a delicate balance of power. The Council, in its infinite wisdom, had always feared one thing above all else: a unified humanity. It was not that the humans lacked the capability to join the galactic community. No, the humans were known for their incredible adaptability, their brilliance in science and technology, and their unrivaled resourcefulness. They had already conquered their own solar system and colonized distant worlds. It was their relentless drive, their insatiable hunger for growth and conquest, that struck fear into the hearts of the Council. The first encounters had been uneventful. Humanity's representatives at the Council were small in number, with little influence and even less power. At first, they played by the rules, engaging diplomatically and participating in trade and peacekeeping efforts. But the cracks were beginning to show. Humanity's ambitions grew with each passing year, and the Council's attempts to contain them were starting to backfire. In the halls of the Galactic Council, discussions about humanity's rise had become a recurring topic. The leaders of the more established species exchanged worried glances, murmuring to one another in their native tongues, unable to silence the unease that had taken root in their minds. "The humans are expanding faster than anticipated," Chancellor Igla of the Zener species remarked during a closed-door meeting. "Their colonies are multiplying at a rate we can't control, and their technology, it outpaces even ours. If they continue this trajectory, they will soon be a force we cannot hope to contain." "Indeed," agreed Threxos, the Tsar representative, a reptilian species known for their cold calculation and cunning. "And they are starting to see themselves as more than just settlers. I hear whispers that they are consolidating their military forces, preparing for something. What, I do not know, but we cannot afford to wait and see." An uneasy silence settled over the room. The Tsar were renowned strategists, and even their words carried weight. Igla's tendrils twitched nervously as he thought about the implications of those words. Humanity was known for its sudden shifts, for its ability to rise in times of crisis. The fear of a united humanity, with its boundless potential and near insatiable desire to conquer, was no longer a distant worry. It was becoming a reality. "They are forming alliances, too," Igla added, the realization settling on him like a heavy cloak. "And not just among themselves. I've heard rumors that they are reaching out to other species in the farthest corners of the galaxy. This unity could very well be their greatest strength." The Council had always maintained its position by keeping each species divided, encouraging rivalry and mistrust among them. But humanity had done the unthinkable. They had begun to unify, forging alliances with other species who once viewed them as a nuisance or a curiosity. "This is the moment we must act," Threxos declared. "If they are allowed to unite fully, we will no longer be able to control them. The Council's authority will crumble under their weight. The time for subtlety is over. We must take decisive action now before it's too late." The conversation shifted then to more drastic measures. A handful of Council members suggested covert operations, sabotage, or even open warfare. Humanity's potential to tip the galactic balance of power was too great to ignore, but it would take more than just a few strategic moves to bring them down. It would require a united front, a coalition of the galaxy's most powerful races, acting swiftly and decisively. In one corner of the room, the human representative, Ambassador Sarah Yates, sat silently, her eyes observing the proceedings. She had long suspected that humanity's rise would not be met with open arms in the galaxy. The Council's whispers were not lost on her, and she understood all too well what was coming. It was only a matter of time before the hammer fell. But Sarah knew something that the Council did not. She knew that humanity had already reached a tipping point. They were no longer the fractured, bickering species they once were. Humanity was becoming something else, something stronger, more dangerous, and far more united than the Council could ever comprehend. As the meeting broke up and the representatives filed out of the room, Sarah stayed behind for a moment longer. She looked out at the stars beyond the Council chamber, her thoughts racing. Humanity was about to be forced into a choice that would either lead to their destruction or their ultimate ascension as a dominant force in the galaxy. And in that choice, the Council's greatest fear would be realized, a united humanity on the Warpath. The following days were tense. Ambassador Sarah Yates could feel the eyes of the galaxy upon her, every interaction charged with the undercurrent of impending conflict. The whispers about humanity's ambitions were growing louder, and the Council was growing bolder in its attempts to undermine them. But the humans weren't backing down. In fact, they were doing the opposite. Across human space, military recruitment centers were overflowing. Citizens, once focused on exploration and colonization, now lined up in droves, signing up to defend their homes, their families, and their growing empire. It wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about asserting themselves in a galaxy that had long underestimated them. As the human fleet expanded, Sarah's heart ached with both pride and dread. The weapons they were building, advanced railguns, energy shields, and gravity-based warfare technologies, were being developed at a pace that shocked even the most optimistic human engineers. Yet, she knew the cost of these advancements. They were preparing for war. In one of the sprawling military complexes on Earth's moon, General Michael Donovan oversaw the final preparations for humanity's largest ever military exercise. His military base, named Prometheus, was a fortress on the moon's surface, bristling with the newest weapons and technologies. But this wasn't just a drill. This was the beginning of something much larger. "General, the fleet is ready for deployment," said Lieutenant Anna Patel, her voice steady but betraying a hint of nervousness. She was a veteran of the earlier conflicts, a survivor of the political skirmishes between the United Earth nations and the Galactic Council. Yet, there was a fire in her eyes, a fire that had only grown since the Council's threats began to escalate. "Deploy the fleet," General Donovan said, his tone flat, but with an underlying edge of determination. "Tell them to remain in formation, but we need to send a message." As the orders went out, hundreds of ships, ranging from massive carriers to nimble destroyers, rumbled to life, breaking orbit and assembling in the outer reaches of human space. They were a sight to behold, a flotilla that stretched across vast distances, a signal of humanity's newfound power. On the Council side of the galaxy, leaders watched the human fleet's movements with growing alarm. The Zener, Tsar, and other factions knew what this meant. The humans were not simply flexing their muscles. They were sending a message that would echo across the galaxy. The time of talking was over. The time of war had begun. "Have you seen the fleet movement?" Chancellor Igla asked, his voice tense as he paced the floor of the Council's command center. "This is no ordinary exercise. This is preparation for something much greater. We cannot allow them to get any closer to our systems. We need to act before they do." Threxos was silent for a long moment, his cold reptilian eyes narrowing as he considered the situation. "We have no choice now. The humans have decided their path. And we must decide ours. If they are allowed to unite fully, they will overrun us all. The balance must be restored before they reach the core worlds." The Council began to prepare for what they knew would come next, an all-out strike against humanity. They rallied their fleets, set up defensive measures, and began to mobilize the lesser species of the galaxy to form an alliance. It was clear that humanity's rise could not go unchallenged. But even as the Council gathered its forces, something unprecedented was happening among the humans. Across the galaxy, communication networks buzzed with encrypted messages. Secretive meetings were held in the most secure locations. And a plan began to take shape, one that was bold, audacious, and terrifying. Humanity was no longer just defending its colonies. They were forming a coalition of their own, a coalition of species who had once been on the fringes of galactic society, ignored and overlooked. Humans had already made deals, secured alliances, and shared their advanced technologies with these species. They were no longer the outcasts they had been in the eyes of the Council. They were becoming the leaders of a new order. On the edge of the galaxy, a fleet of ships, powered by human ingenuity and the new allies they had secured, began to take shape. It was a patchwork force, diverse in species but united in purpose. Each vessel carried the mark of humanity's determination, a symbol of the unity that would change the galaxy forever. Back on Earth, Sarah Yates stood before a massive holographic display in her private office. She studied the fleet positions, the alliances, and the Council's impending response. The humans had come far since their first tentative steps into the galactic stage, but now, the consequences of their ambition were coming home to roost. It was no longer a matter of diplomacy or peaceful negotiations. The Council had made it clear, war was on the horizon. The question now was whether humanity could stand united in the face of overwhelming odds, whether their will to survive and thrive could push them through the greatest challenge they had ever faced. The storm was coming. And humanity, for the first time in its existence, was ready to fight. The galaxy held its breath. For weeks, the political atmosphere had been tense, with whispers and rumors flowing through every corner of known space. The Galactic Council, with its numerous factions, had already begun mobilizing its fleets, preparing for a conflict that none of them wanted, but none could avoid. Humanity, on the other hand, had united in a way no one had ever anticipated. The Council's greatest fear was unfolding, and they were running out of time. Ambassador Sarah Yates had spent countless hours in strategic meetings, organizing the united front of humanity and their allies. In the dark corners of human space, fleets were taking shape, led by humanity's finest commanders, General Donovan among them. He stood at the helm of a mammoth warship, the Vanguard, his eyes scanning the tactical displays. The time had come to show the galaxy that humanity could no longer be ignored, that their survival and growth were no longer a question, they were a force to be reckoned with. The first strike came not from the humans, but from the Tsar. On the outer rim of the human-controlled frontier, a small human mining colony, Seraphis, was suddenly besieged by a surprise assault. Tsar ships, sleek and cold, appeared out of nowhere, decimating the colony's defense systems in mere moments. The humans had thought themselves safe in this remote corner of space, but the Council's attempt to preemptively strike was swift and brutal. The Tsar, calculating and ruthless, sent a simple message, "This is only the beginning." On Earth, news of the attack spread like wildfire. Panic spread across the global communications networks, but it was quickly replaced with something far more dangerous: resolve. "General, the Tsar have made their move," Lieutenant Patel reported grimly as she entered Donovan's command center. Her eyes were sharp, her face pale from the emergency communications she had just processed. "They've hit Seraphis. The colony is almost completely destroyed." Donovan's hand tightened on the armrest of his command chair. His jaw clenched. "Then it's time we respond." Within moments, the entire human fleet, already positioned just outside Council territory, began to mobilize. They were ready. The Vanguard led the charge, its engines burning bright as it pushed through the blackness of space with a singular purpose. Across the galaxy, the news rippled outward. The humans were striking back. The first target, a Tsar command station in orbit above their homeworld. The humans had tracked its location, calculating the station's strategic importance in the upcoming conflict. It was a bold move, an act of defiance that sent shockwaves through the Council's leadership. "We can't allow this to happen," Threxos, the Tsar representative, hissed as he observed the incoming transmissions. His talons dug into the armrests of his chair. "The humans will think they are invincible if they win even one battle. We must strike harder, faster." But it was already too late. The first shots had been fired. The Vanguard's weapon systems came to life, unleashing a devastating barrage upon the Tsar station. The human ships, using advanced targeting systems, tore through the station's shields, then through its hull. The Tsar didn't expect the humans to possess such precision or such firepower. The station fell in less than an hour, a smoking wreck adrift in space, the wreckage flashing across the visual feeds in all corners of the galaxy. "Target eliminated," Donovan's voice crackled over the comms. On to the next. The humans did not waste time. They moved swiftly, attacking smaller, strategic installations on the outskirts of Council territory. While these strikes were designed to send a message, they also had a more practical purpose. Humanity needed to cripple the infrastructure of the Council's response. Meanwhile, the Council scrambled to respond. The Zener, once confident in their ability to maintain galactic peace, now found themselves facing a new reality. Humanity had already begun to outmaneuver them. They could no longer play a game of politics. The battlefield was being drawn, and it was clear that the Council's methods of diplomacy were no match for humanity's rapid ascension. "Prepare for the second wave," Igla ordered, his tendrils quivering with barely restrained fury. "Send everything we have. It's time we show them what happens when they challenge the Council." But as the Tsar scrambled to organize their counterattack, humanity was not content to wait. Ships from their newly formed alliance, the coalition of species once relegated to the edges of galactic politics, joined the fray. These ships, many of them designed with human technology, appeared at the edges of Council space, their weapons primed. This wasn't just humanity striking back. It was the beginning of a new era. Back on Earth, Sarah Yates watched the feeds with a sense of grim satisfaction. The message had been sent. The galaxy would no longer be able to ignore humanity. They were no longer the weak newcomers, they were the threat no one had seen coming. The Council's response would be swift. But in the days to come, they would learn the most terrifying truth of all: humanity, united, would no longer be a faction among many. They would be the Warpath itself. The battle for galactic dominance had begun in earnest. What had started as isolated skirmishes between humanity and the Tsar had now become a full-scale war, one that threatened to engulf the entire galaxy. The Galactic Council, caught off guard by humanity's sheer resolve and the unexpected rise of their newfound allies, scrambled to keep the conflict contained. But it was too late. The warpath had been lit, and the flames of conflict were spreading. On the human side, General Michael Donovan stood in the command center of the vanguard, his eyes fixed on the tactical displays. The Tsar had retaliated, their fleets mobilizing in a desperate bid to crush humanity's growing influence. But the humans had anticipated this. The vanguard's assault on the Tsar command station had been just the beginning. Humanity had already secured key alliances with previously neutral species: the Aquilians, masters of the deep space habitats, the Rinchi, a warlike race with a vast network of asteroids, and the Genthari, a nomadic people who excelled at guerrilla warfare. They were ready. The human alliance was a force to be reckoned with, and it was united under one banner: survival. "General," Lieutenant Patel's voice broke through his thoughts. "Our forces are ready to strike. We've established a foothold on their homeworlds and taken control of several key supply lines. If we hit their core systems now, we can cripple their war effort." Donovan nodded. His fingers danced over the control panel, reviewing the positions of the enemy fleets. "Then we strike now. We'll hit them where they least expect it, right in the heart of their power. Once we cripple their military capabilities, we'll force them to negotiate peace." The order was given, and within hours, the human fleet moved toward its target, a major Council stronghold located in the central systems, where the Council's most powerful fleets were stationed. A hub of military coordination and resource distribution, it was the beating heart of the Galactic Council's defense network. If the humans could take it, the Council would be forced to reckon with the reality that they had underestimated their adversaries. Meanwhile, back at the Galactic Council's high command, panic was setting in. The Tsar had lost one of their most valuable stations, and the humans were ramping up their assaults, gaining ground at an alarming pace. The Council had underestimated the sheer scale of humanity's determination, and now they were paying the price. "We cannot let them reach the core," Igla hissed, his eyes wide with fear. "If they break our lines, they'll have access to our most protected resources. We must reinforce the central sectors and prepare for an all-out counteroffensive." Threxos, calm but clearly furious, leaned forward in his seat. "We must deploy the full force of the Alliance, and we must act quickly. The humans will not stop now. They've proven themselves too dangerous." The Tsar, the Zener, the Rinchi, each race prepared their fleets for one final, desperate push. The stakes had never been higher. The Council was prepared to use every resource at its disposal to crush the humans once and for all. The Battle of the Nexus system began just after dawn on the fourth day of conflict. Human ships appeared at the edge of the Nexus system, a vast collection of planets and stations surrounded by a dense asteroid belt. It was the heart of the Council's military presence, home to their most advanced fleets. The humans knew it would be their toughest challenge yet. General Donovan's strategy was simple but effective: divide and conquer. Using their superior speed and advanced technology, the humans split their forces into smaller, agile groups, striking at vulnerable points in the system and drawing the Council's forces into a chaotic scramble. The humans attacked with precision, knowing the Council's reliance on large, coordinated fleets would give them an advantage. The battle was intense. Tsar ships, sleek and deadly, tore through the darkness of space, their weapons flashing in bursts of energy. Xener warships, built for endurance, plowed through enemy lines, while the humans unleashed a deadly mix of cutting-edge railguns and energy-based weapons. The air was thick with the sound of battleships trading fire, explosions shaking the very fabric of space itself. But humanity's greatest weapon was not just their technology or their fleets. It was their adaptability. They learned quickly, adapted in real time to every change in strategy, and used the Council's own tactics against them. The Xener, known for their strategic brilliance, found themselves caught in a web of misdirection as human forces executed flawless feints and ambushes. "Sir, we've lost contact with the flagship," Lieutenant Patel reported urgently. "We can't get through their jamming frequencies." "We don't need to," Donovan replied, eyes scanning the battlefield. "Our fleet is hitting them from all sides. This is our moment. Push forward, full throttle." Human forces tore through the heart of the Nexus system, inflicting massive losses on the Council's fleet. It was a shocking defeat, one that sent ripples through the Council's ranks. For the first time in millennia, the once mighty Galactic Council found itself reeling, unsure of how to handle an adversary that fought not just with weapons, but with sheer will and unity. On Earth, Sarah Yates watched as the battle unfolded on her screens. The victory was bittersweet. The humans had dealt a blow to the Council, but it was only a matter of time before the Council would retaliate with all their might. The stakes had been raised, and there would be no turning back. The flames of war had spread across the galaxy, and there was no telling how far they would reach. What had started as a struggle for survival had now become something more, a fight for the future of the galaxy itself. Humanity had made its mark, but whether they could hold it would depend on their ability to continue fighting as a united force, against all odds. The victory at the Nexus system sent shockwaves through the galaxy. For the first time in millennia, the Galactic Council was on the defensive. The humans, once considered a minor player, had now made their mark as a force that could not be ignored. But the galaxy's leaders had underestimated them once again. The Council, humiliated and enraged, was now prepared to unleash everything it had to crush humanity once and for all. The Human Alliance, having tasted victory, found itself standing on the precipice of a much darker future. The Council was not content to merely fight, it was out for total annihilation. Their retaliation would be swift, brutal, and devastating. And humanity would be at the center of it all. Back at Earth, General Donovan stood before a massive holographic map of the galaxy, studying the movements of the enemy fleet. His face was hard, his jaw set with grim determination. He had led his forces to victory at Nexus, but he knew that the Council would not let this insult stand. They would come at them with everything they had. "We've broken their lines, but they will retaliate," Donovan said, his voice low. "Expect no mercy. The Council is going to launch their full-scale assault, and it will be the most devastating strike we've ever faced." Lieutenant Patel nodded. "We've heard rumors. They're gathering their fleets for an assault on Earth itself, preparing to turn the tide of this war." Donovan's gaze hardened. The idea of an all-out attack on Earth, the cradle of humanity, was something he couldn't allow to happen. His people, his home, were at the heart of everything. The war had escalated beyond anyone's control, but humanity had to stand firm, no matter the cost. "We can't let them reach Earth," Donovan stated. We need to fortify our defenses, mobilize our allies, and take the fight to them before they make their move. Meanwhile, on the far side of the galaxy, the Council's greatest minds were plotting their ultimate counteroffensive. Threxos, the calculating Tsar leader, oversaw the development of a devastating weapon, a supermassive energy cannon capable of destroying entire fleets in a single blast. The Council had called upon all its most secretive projects, hidden for years in the depths of their technology vaults. This weapon, known as the Oblivion Pulse, would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. "This is our final play," Threxos declared, his voice cold and sharp. "Once we fire this weapon, we will obliterate the human fleets, and their homeworld will be next. No one will dare to challenge the Galactic Council again." The weapon was a marvel of destructive power, an energy weapon designed to target the very core of a planet's defenses, capable of sending a shockwave across entire star systems. The Council believed this would be the end of humanity's defiance. With Earth destroyed, the war would be over, and the human threat would be eliminated for good. But the humans were not sitting idle. They knew the stakes had grown unimaginably higher. The Oblivion Pulse was not just a weapon, it was a declaration of total war. If they didn't act fast, the entire human race could be wiped out in one fell swoop. In the heart of the human alliance, Sarah Yates worked tirelessly, coordinating with their allies and strategizing for the war's next phase. She knew what the Council was preparing, their intelligence had confirmed the existence of the Oblivion Pulse, and she knew that if the weapon was fired, it would change everything. The galaxy would be plunged into a new dark age, with the Council ruling unchallenged. "We have to destroy the Oblivion Pulse before it can fire," Sarah said, her voice firm and unwavering. "If we don't, the war will be lost, and humanity will be nothing more than a footnote in galactic history." But the challenge was immense. The weapon was hidden deep within Council space, guarded by fleets of warships and advanced defenses. The human alliance could not risk sending their forces directly to destroy it, they would be overwhelmed. Instead, Sarah called upon the one thing the humans had mastered: ingenuity. A team of elite human soldiers, backed by their allies, was assembled for a covert mission. Their task: infiltrate Council territory, find the Oblivion Pulse, and sabotage it before it could be used. Time was running out. Meanwhile, as the human fleet engaged the Council in a series of increasingly violent battles, the tide began to turn. The humans, emboldened by their victories, started to push deeper into Council space, striking at vulnerable targets and slowly but surely crippling the Council's ability to wage war. Yet, with each victory came a greater cost. The human fleet was battered. Some ships, like the Vanguard, were heavily damaged, their crews facing the unrelenting pressure of the Council's retaliation. The once united human alliance began to show cracks, with some of the allied species questioning whether they could continue to fight such a devastating war. In one of the outer reaches of human-controlled space, the first signs of a shift began to appear. The Gentari, once a key ally, had begun to pull back, unwilling to continue the war after suffering significant losses. The Aquilians, too, began to voice their concerns about the growing toll of the war. Humanity stood at a crossroads: would they continue to fight on, or would their fragile alliance fall apart under the strain? Donovan, still reeling from the intensity of the battles, addressed his command staff. "We're in the fight of our lives. The Council thinks they've broken us, but they're wrong. We will not back down. Earth is our home, and we will defend it with everything we have." As the human fleet prepared for the decisive battle, Sarah Yates stood before the holographic map of the galaxy, a heavy weight on her shoulders. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with peril, but there was no turning back. The galaxy was about to witness the final confrontation between humanity and the Galactic Council. The war was no longer just about survival. It was about taking a stand for the future. And humanity would show the galaxy what it meant to face down extinction and rise from the ashes, stronger than ever. The galaxy was at a tipping point. The human alliance had come so far, carving a path of destruction through the once dominant Galactic Council. But with each victory came a harsh realization: the Council was not willing to yield, no matter the cost. The Oblivion Pulse was nearly ready, and its firing would spell the end of humanity's fight for survival. The human fleet, battered and stretched thin, had no choice but to make one last desperate push, straight into the heart of the enemy. General Michael Donovan stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, staring out at the stars. His fleet, a patchwork of human warships and their alien allies, was spread out before him. The Council's forces, far larger and more experienced, had set up a near-impenetrable blockade around the heart of their territory, where the Oblivion Pulse was located. To destroy it, they would need to break through one of the most heavily fortified systems in the galaxy. Donovan's gaze hardened. He knew this would be their greatest challenge yet, but it had to be done. We've been given one chance. We can't afford to fail. We take the fight to the Oblivion Pulse, no matter the cost. Lieutenant Patel, standing beside him, added, "General, we've also received word from the Gentari. They're pulling out of the fight. If we don't get this done soon, our alliance could fracture entirely." Donovan nodded grimly. The fragile unity that had allowed them to face the Council was faltering. But it wasn't just about alliances anymore. It was about survival. And Earth. "We will hold this together," Donovan said with cold determination. "No one's leaving until the job's done." As the human fleet surged forward, the Council's defenses began to tighten. But humanity had learned from every battle. They had adapted. In the weeks following their victory at the Nexus system, the humans had honed their tactics, using guerrilla warfare, feints, and surprise attacks to break through the Council's defenses. They knew the Council's strengths, and now they were using those very strengths against them. The battle for the system surrounding the Oblivion Pulse began with a massive fleet engagement, a cacophony of weapons fire, explosions, and tactical maneuvers that shook the very fabric of space. The Council's forces, led by the ruthless Tsar fleet, were prepared for a fight, but the humans were determined to win. The human fleet had been forced to split into smaller groups to avoid being destroyed by the Council's overwhelming firepower. Their goal was clear: disable the Oblivion Pulse before it could fire. But the Council was not unprepared. As the battle raged on, the humans found themselves facing an array of traps, ambushes, and advanced weapons technology they had never encountered. "We're outnumbered, General," shouted one of the bridge officers as enemy ships swarmed their position. "We can't keep this up for much longer." Donovan's grip tightened on the command chair. "We don't need to fight them all. We need to break through. Keep the pressure on. Our strike force is already inside the system. We'll give them a clear path." The humans had sent a covert team of elite soldiers, led by Commander Erica Hall, to infiltrate the Council's heavily protected starbase, the home of the Oblivion Pulse. The team's mission was to sabotage the weapon before it could fire. They would have no backup. No reinforcements. It was a one-way mission. Meanwhile, back in the chaos of battle, Sarah Yates coordinated with the remaining fleet commanders. She could hear the tension in their voices as the communication channels buzzed with reports of heavy losses. The Council's forces were relentless, pushing back harder than ever before. And yet, humanity held firm. There would be no retreat. "We're almost there," Sarah said, her voice calm despite the intensity of the situation. "Hold them off just a little longer. The strike team is in position." Commander Hall's team, hidden within the shadows of the Council starbase, made their way to the heart of the weapons control room. They knew time was running out, the Oblivion Pulse was primed and ready to fire. They had to move quickly, and every step had to be precise. But the Council was not blind to the threat. As Hall and her team neared the control center, the alarm bells rang throughout the starbase. The Council had activated their security systems, triggering a lockdown. "We're going to have to fight our way through," Hall said, her voice tight. "Brace yourselves." The team fought their way to the core of the starbase, using their advanced human tech and brutal tactics to carve a path through the enemy. But they were running out of time. The Oblivion Pulse was just moments away from activation. Back in space, Donovan's fleet was taking an impossible amount of damage. The humans fought valiantly, but their forces were dwindling. Every time they made a breakthrough, the Council seemed to have another trap waiting. The outcome of the battle was still uncertain. Sarah's voice crackled through the comms. "General, we have confirmation. Commander Hall's team is in the control room. They're moments away from sabotaging the Oblivion Pulse. Hold the line." The human fleet, battered and bruised, pushed harder than ever. The fight was brutal, but every human ship, every soldier, and every ally knew what was at stake. They couldn't afford to lose. And then, just as the Council was about to launch their final, devastating blow, the unthinkable happened. A massive explosion ripped through the Oblivion Pulse facility. Commander Hall and her team had succeeded. The weapon was destroyed, rendered useless. The entire battlefield seemed to stop. The enemy's ships faltered, their focus shattered. The human fleet, exhausted but unbowed, seized the moment and launched a full-scale counterattack. General Donovan, his heart pounding, watched as the enemy fleet began to break apart under the relentless assault. The humans were winning. Against all odds, they were winning. "We did it," Lieutenant Patel whispered. The Council's retaliation had been crushed. Their greatest weapon was gone. The tides of the war had finally turned in humanity's favor. But even as the battle seemed to reach its climax, Donovan knew this was just the beginning. The Council would not take this defeat lightly. They would come again, stronger than before. The final phase of the war was about to begin. Humanity had won the day, but the galaxy was still at war. The destruction of the Oblivion Pulse had turned the tide of the war. For the first time, the Galactic Council found itself reeling, its most powerful weapon shattered, its fleet scattered and in disarray. Humanity had won a hard-fought victory, but it came at a tremendous cost. The battle for the future of the galaxy had reached its zenith, and the final confrontation was on the horizon. As the human fleet regrouped, General Michael Donovan stood in the quiet command center of the vanguard, his gaze distant. The last battle had been brutal. The losses on both sides had been staggering. But despite it all, humanity had emerged victorious, for now. "General, we've received a transmission from the Tsar," Lieutenant Patel reported, her voice grim. "They've called for an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council. They want to discuss a peace treaty." Donovan's expression darkened. "Peace treaty? After everything that's happened, they think they can just negotiate their way out?" Patel nodded. "It's not just the Tsar. The Rinshi and the Zener have also agreed to attend. They're asking for terms of surrender. They want to discuss the future of the galaxy." A tense silence filled the room as Donovan processed the news. The humans had shattered the Council's unified front, but now the galaxy was at a crossroads. A peace treaty could bring an end to the bloodshed, but would it be enough to ensure humanity's survival? Or would it be another ploy to crush them from the inside, to bring them to heel? "Prepare a response," Donovan said, his voice low but resolute. "Tell them we're listening. But we'll accept no terms that compromise humanity's freedom. They'll learn what it means to face a united humanity." In the heart of Council space, the emergency summit convened. Representatives from the Tsar, Zener, Rinshi, and several other species gathered at the high table, the air thick with tension. Threxos, the Tsar leader, spoke first. "We are willing to offer a peace settlement," Threxos began, his voice smooth and calculated. "The destruction of the Oblivion Pulse has forced us to reconsider our position. The human fleets are too powerful, too unpredictable. We have lost too many to continue this war. We are ready to negotiate." Sarah Yates stood in front of the human delegation, her posture unwavering. "Your peace settlement comes too late," she said, her voice cutting through the room. "You underestimated us at every turn, and now you want to dictate terms. We've won the right to decide the future of the galaxy. We demand an end to your military occupation of human colonies," she continued. "And if you're truly sincere, you'll cease your attacks on all human worlds. We're prepared to defend ourselves, but we don't want war anymore." The Council representatives exchanged uneasy glances, sensing the resolve in Sarah's words. It was clear that humanity would not back down. They had become a force to be reckoned with, and the Council's once unquestionable dominance had been irrevocably shattered. "We have no choice but to agree to your terms," Threxos finally said, his voice tight. "But know this, human, you have irrevocably changed the galaxy. We will never forget this." As the summit concluded, Sarah Yates turned to Donovan, who had just arrived via hologram. "We've secured peace," she said, though her voice carried a somber edge. "But the galaxy will never be the same. There's a new power in the galaxy now, and the Council won't forget what happened here." Donovan nodded, his gaze fixed on the stars. "It's over for now. But we've set the stage for something greater. Humanity's place in this galaxy is no longer in question. We will shape the future, on our own terms." The war was officially over. The human fleets had returned to Earth, and peace treaties were signed with the Council, cementing humanity's place as an equal among the galaxy's powers. But the human race knew that peace, while hard-won, was fragile. The battles may have ended, but the war for the galaxy's future was far from over. Humanity had risen from the ashes of a shattered galaxy. The once impossible idea of a united human race, capable of standing against the might of the most powerful galactic civilizations, had become a reality. And now, as they returned to their homeworld, the humans looked toward the stars with new eyes, no longer as the underdogs, but as the ones who had won the right to lead the galaxy into an uncertain future. But the Council's defeat was only the beginning of a new era. The galaxy, now changed forever, would never be the same again. And humanity, with its boundless courage and unyielding will, would continue to press forward, knowing that there would always be new challenges ahead. The war for the future was over, but the story of humanity's rise had just begun. The galaxy would never forget the day humanity made its stand. They had faced the impossible, and in doing so, they had proven that when united, there was no force in the universe that could stop them. Humanity had claimed its place among the stars.